Welcome to the Play-by-Play Review. I'm your host, Henry, and we have a lot to go over, so let's get right into it. We're jumping back into the Caprulu sector for one final little adventure here to conclude this sort of month-long journey through StarCraft and StarCraft II. Go into Legacy of the Void, the finale of all of StarCraft to this point. There's actually a couple different things. I'm also going to go over Nova Covert Ops at the end, so we get a little bit after as well. But yeah, so there's a little bit here. So there's a prologue series of missions, then the whole of Legacy of the Void, the standard campaign, and then the epilogue, and then also Nova Covert Ops after. I'm just going to kind of briefly go over that very briefly at the end. But Legacy of the Void itself, it follows the Protoss, picks up an indeterminate amount of time after Heart of the Swarm. I actually don't remember how long it is specifically, but yeah, it's not super long after. I know that. Basically, the Dominion is now under the control of Valerian Manx, and so it's a good guy faction now. Raynor and Matt Horner are commanders in the Dominion itself, which I always find kind of funny to see because, like, for so long, especially for Raynor, he's been fighting against the Dominion and, not exactly being a, official guy who's like in charge of like whole armies and stuff. I know he's, the Marshal of Marsara and whatnot, but that's like not the same. So it's always a little funny to see him there. Also, Kerrigan has, full control of the Swarm at this point, and she's off hunting down Amon's forces and whatnot. And so that picks up where the Protoss are. And so the prologue follows Zeratul as he's trying to figure out the last like pieces of the prophecy, and the prophecy has been something he's been like trying to track down for like at least since StarCraft II Wings of Liberty, with his side missions that you play in, like that's all him hunting down the prophecy and whatnot. And like one of the main part of the prophecy was to go and rescue Kerrigan because she's like the centerpiece of it. But like even going back to StarCraft 1 with the secret mission Brood War, it's still a little bit of a prophecy there. So anyway, StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void, I guess actually the intro cutscene for it comes after the prologue. So yeah, the prologue basically follows Zeratul as he's going through space, and he's like, all right, so the last piece I need is to figure out like something about where Amon is supposed to like show back up, supposedly. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go look for the person who probably knew him the best, and that was Dr. Narud, Samir Duran, the shapeshifter who Kerrigan killed in a big old key blast battle a la Dragon Ball Z in Heart of the Swarm. So Zeratul is going to look for basically goes to a Mobius compound. Since the Mobius Corps was run by Dr. Narud, they're all kind of aligned towards Amon and whatnot, so it gives you an excuse to fight the Terrans essentially, since now the Dominion is no longer evil. And so the first prologue mission, Dark Whispers, basically has you going through a Mobius Corps facility as Kerrigan also shows up because she's hunting down all the hybrid. And Kerrigan's like, just stay out of my way and get what you need to do before I blow up the place. So you have a little bit of a time limit. It's not super hard. It's basically like the prologue missions came out like not too long before Legacy of the Void itself. I think they're actually built in the Heart of the Swarm engine compared to the Legacy of the Void engine. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's what they are. And a lot of these are basically just like, kind of not just like introductions, but it's a lot of like you learning how to play the Protoss and getting you set up for what's to come in Legacy of the Void proper. So the mission itself is nothing really to write home about. There's at least some kind of cool stuff where it's Mobius Corps is like clearly messing around with all three factions at once, where you get Terrans actually warping in, how the Protoss usually do, and I always find that pretty cool. Like you get warp in Marines and warp in Marauders, which is pretty neat. But other than that, it's not super interesting. Zeratul basically just gets a clue to go to a different place to go further with the prophecy. It's not super complicated. I think also, is it either this mission or the next mission? I think it's during this mission. Or actually, like in the cutscene before the mission, he gets contacted by a Protoss Praetor from the Daylom named Talus, and she's like basically. I was kind of like in the area, I think, and was like asked Zeratul to help, and so they ally together. And it's funny here, like how respectful Talus is towards Zeratul, and like how just chill the Protoss are with him. When like as it goes forward, like for some reason the story kind of plays up to the fact that Zeratul is like a heretic to the Protoss, and like is kind of an outcast to like all of Protoss society for some reason. Because I guess it's like I think it still stems back to the whole Rashagal thing in Brood War, but I honestly, and also the like that he unintentionally let slip the location of Ired to the Overmind, but even then it's like just not handled very well, and I don't know why everyone's like a lot like why they make Protoss hostile to Zeratul. I don't get it. But anyway, Talus is not. She's also somewhere where the devs get to show off one of the new models. Talus is the model of Protoss Adept. So my brief thing of going over new units in Wings or in Legacy of the Void, so like I did with Heart of the Swarm. So each faction gets 2 new units. Protoss get an Adept, which is a gateway unit, so it's like an infantry unit that has a range attack, pretty long range attack as well. Not super durable, probably one of the flimsiest units I think in the StarCraft or in the Protoss arsenal. But they're pretty quick, and they have like the shade ability, so they can like launch a shade of themselves, or launch a shade of themselves, and it can like pass through objects and stuff, so it can like go through units, and you can like teleport to the shade whenever you want. So it's like a kind of an infiltration specialist in a way, especially for early game. And I forget if its basic attacks do like more damage to light. I think it's what it does. It's a neat unit. I like it. It's like not super complex, but I think it's pretty cool. The other new unit that the Protoss will get is the Disruptor. You actually don't get to play with it in the campaign, which is kind of funny. But the Disruptor is basically this like floating orb with some like panels that orbit around it, and the orb can shoot out this giant ball of energy that you can trigger manually, and it will explode in a radius and do a ton of damage. So it's this sort of boomer bust, like all or nothing. You since it has no regular attack, so it is kind of defenseless. But you know, if you hit with that orb of energy thing, the like disruption orb or pulse or whatever it's called, it'll do a lot of damage. It's I think like from when I used to watch some like pro games, you'd usually see like a group of like 6 to 10 disruptors that they would use, and it was like more used for area denial more than anything else, and like splitting up enemy forces, because you know you land a couple of those disruption orbs in the middle of a giant like death ball of a Terran or whatever faction they're playing, it's gonna wreck them completely. So it's a pretty neat unit, and like Protoss in StarCraft II, I feel like Protoss didn't have a ton of area damage, so because like it obviously was missing the Reaver compared to StarCraft 1. So it makes sense that they gave him something like that. So for the Terrans, they get the Cyclone, which is this armored car-ish vehicle. I forget if it's on treads or wheels. I think it's on wheels, but actually, let me see if that has the model here. It's actually on treads. Never mind. But it's basically like it has rocket launchers strapped to the sides, and honestly, like barely have used the Cyclone because I don't play too much multiplayer. And it never really shows up in any of the campaigns or anything like that, but it has like a lock-on ability. So like you can lock onto something and it will just like do a constant stream of damage over like a short amount of time. And like you can also move the Cyclone while using that lock-on ability. So it's pretty powerful there. It's a factory unit from what I remember. And I think it also just has an auto attack, but I don't remember for sure. I honestly, this is like one of the units I know the least about in like all of StarCraft 2, if I'm being honest. The other new unit is the Liberator. The Liberator is awesome. I love that ship so much. It's really cool. It's a starport unit, so it's a flying ship, and it's another siege weapon kind of. So it has anti-aircraft missile, like dedicated air-to-air missile. Can't hit ground with that, and it's okay. It's not great. It's more so that the Liberator can siege up into it's siege mode essentially. It's like a flying siege tank, and it basically has like a railgun that it can siege up, and it has like a giant radius that you can click on, and it'll shoot anything that comes into that radius and do a bunch of damage. So it's actually I think in a lot of multiplayer matches like pros will use liberators not like as a defense mechanism, but instead they'll like build one or two and then like float them around the map and just park them in the back of a mineral line and just start using it to pick off workers. It's really funny. But liberators are like the most patriotic ship ever because it's like, it's the liberation and all that. And it's, I think it's the missiles are called Lexington missiles, and then the gun is called the Concorde gun. I'm pretty sure it might be the other way around, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So, it's, it's not subtle, but it's very fun. I love the Liberator. It's great. It's themed great, and it's a fun unit to use. Then for the Zerg actually get a returning unit in the Lurker. So they showed back up in Heart of the Swarm as an option, and now in multiplayer and just in general, the Zerg get the Lurker permanently as an evolution to the Hydralisk. And then continuing with that theme of evolutions to a existing unit, the Roach actually gets an evolution into the Ravager. And the Ravager is a very, very strong unit, and that it is like a slightly bulkier, but I think slower and much larger Roach, essentially, that has, I think, I actually don't remember if it has an auto attack or not, but the main thing that you use the Ravager for is that it has basically a mortar on the top of it. It like shoots this like plasma bile thing that you click on the ground essentially where you want it to land, and it'll shoot it, and then after a delay of like 4 seconds, I want to say, it'll land and do a lot of damage. So it's really good at dealing with static defense because they obviously cannot move to avoid it. The radius is very small, but if it hits, it does a lot of damage, and I think it can also hit air too, which is crazy. Because, I mean, it makes kind of a little bit of sense because it's like basically falling from the sky, but it's still pretty crazy. But it's like, it's the Zerg's answer to the bunker or the like photon cannon or just pylons. So it's Ravager is really, really strong. I know that. All right. I think that is it for new units. They honestly don't show up all that much in Legacy of the Void. They show up more so in Nova Covert Ops than Legacy of the Void. But it's still, just figured I'd show them off anyway. Then, all right, so let's go back to Dark Whisper, or I guess the prologue. Since we started, loop back to Talus because that's where it started. Talus is using the Adept model. You don't really see her too much in game, but she's kind of just the NPC, someone for Zeratul to talk to essentially. So the second mission is Ghost in the Fog. This is for the prologue once again. And Ghost in the Fog is basically you get there's a temple that you got to go break into to go continue with prophecy and stuff, and there's a bunch of Tal'Darim that show up, and the Tal'Darim finally get a bit of a facelift. They are no longer just like slightly recolored normal Protoss. They actually have a full on like different look to them. They're very spiky, all black and red. Like they're like all the armor and stuff is usually like matte black, and then all the crystals and all the energy is all red, which is actually consistent theming wise because red, like psionic energy, is symbolic of being like close to the void, which is like where the Xel'Naga and like Amon come from. So like I know Dark Archons are like full of void energy, and they're all red and stuff. So yeah, so there's that. So the like enemy that shows up is High Lord Malash, who's the leader of the Tal'Darim, and I guess he's also there on the temple because he uses it as like a phone, like a telephone to Amon, basically. So you can just like talk to Amon and discern what to do next. And Zeratul, I guess, wants to go and blow it up and also learn more prophecy stuff. So Ghost in the Fog is kind of a neat one in the sense of like there's no Vespene geysers on the map, but there's like these fissures in the ground itself that can like release Vespene. So it's you have like a fixed amount, but it'll continuously create Vespene like out of the fissures, but it's like you can't just have a steady stream of it. Essentially, it's you get it in bursts, which is a neat little design for a pretty simple mission. It's like you don't get a ton of tech in the to play with, but it's it's a solid mission overall. Nothing too special. But yeah, eventually you go in and you blow up the Tal'Darim and you get inside. And then mission number 3 is Evil Awoken. And so it's a no build mission. So you take Zeratul and some Protoss stalkers, and you go in, and Talos kind of covers you with her forces, and you just fight through a bunch of Tal'Darim and I think even some hybrid towards the end. And you go in and you destroy the like device that Malash is using to talk with Amon, and you get to learn the last piece of the prophecy. And then you got to dip because there's a bunch of void energy. I think from destroying the thing, like the void energy starts going mad and starts like killing people and stuff. And it's an escape sequence essentially. So Zeratul escapes. The Talos kind of remains behind to cover your escape and sacrifice herself, because it's kind of a thing that the Protoss do a lot, is self-sacrifice. And so it's kind of a typical Protoss moment. And so Zeratul does eventually figure out the keystone, which is what they start to call the Xel'Naga artifact that used in, basically assembled and used in StarCraft II Wings of Liberty to purify Kerrigan and kill a bunch of Zerg Char. That is apparently the key. It's the keystone to like the final piece of the prophecy essentially. And it's like the keystone will like open the way to the Xel'Naga is like what it's supposed to be. So it's like the idea is that like the spirit of Tassadar that like contacted Zeratul on Ire and the Corpse of the Overmind back in Wings of Liberty was like guiding him toward the prophecy. And now it's basically telling it's basically telling him to get the keystone, which can then unlock the way to the Xel'Naga, because they gotta free the Xel'Naga, the good ones, to stop the bad Xel'Naga of Amon. And that's basically kind of what the prophecy says. It's a little convoluted and not super interesting, if I'm being honest. It's just kind of like pretty generic save the world and fetch quest kind of prophecy, but it is what it is. So Zeratul after that departs back to return to Artanis to give him the news, essentially. So then we get to sort of the intro cinematic to Legacy of the Void itself. So the one for Heart of the Swarm, which I praised a lot, the dream sequence, which was better than the rest of the campaign. That cutscene is insane. This one is... I'd say if that cutscene from Heart of the Swarm didn't exist, the cutscene Unity, which is the trailer for Legacy of the Void, would be the best cutscene in all of StarCraft II. Unity is awesome. It's just eclipsed a little bit by the sheer peak that is the Heart of the Swarm intro cutscene. But Unity is still really cool. So you get a look at what is known as the Akundalar, which is the translates to tip of the spear. So it's basically a small like forward party of Protoss warp down to the surface of Ire, because by the way, the Protoss are going to reclaim their homeland of Ire from the Zerg, since they figured it's about time at this point, and they're all kind of unified. So there's like a group of like 6, I think. So it's 2 zealots. Actually, I think it's 3 zealots, 2 High Templar, and a probe. Probius is his name, as he gets named in Heroes of the Storm, at least. But they warp down, and Probius starts warping in a pylon, because once they get a pylon active, they can warp in the rest of their forces. So the other Protoss are around and they're defending it. And it's just a really cool action sequence and showing like how the Protoss operate with the Kala, which I think I mentioned before in one of the older ones, but the Kala is basically this like shared space, like psionic space that the Protoss have, that they can basically just feel each other's like thoughts and emotions, and they can communicate with each other in it, and it just makes them like really coordinated and all that, and like unifies their society. They have it connected through nerve cords, which is basically just like really giant like braids that they have on the back of their heads. And then the Dark Templar had severed their nerve cords because they for various reasons, and it was a whole thing. But yeah, that was like a big... That's what caused the big Protoss civil war that happened like 1,000 years ago. And yeah, so anyway, the big things about Unity is that you get to see an Archon happen. So it's like the 2 High Templar merge and become the Archon, and the Archon like fights the Ultralisk, and it's just a really well animated fight scene essentially, and it's like shows that like just cool Protoss stuff, and eventually it's the one zealot that like was in another cutscene, and he was like a veteran. He's got like one eye and stuff, and it's just him, and he's got this like massive horde of Zerglings and just Hydralisks and all sorts of Zerg showing up, but he's like standing fighting, activates the side blades, and it's like cool little pose, and then the pylon finishes, and it's like a nice Easter egg of that in the cutscene. It takes exactly 90 seconds for the pylon to warp in, and that's how long it takes in game to build essentially. So it's a nice little nod there. And then once the pylon gets finished, the just like hundreds of zealots starts warping in, and then they can take the fight to higher. So yeah, that's the intro to Legacy of the Void. Cutscene wise, we actually get in terms of the campaign, we get a little bit like flashback in time by like 5 minutes essentially, and it's like on the bridge of the Protoss mothership where Artanis is like giving a speech to all of his troops. Rah rah, let's go reclaim Iron and whatnot. And then Zeratul shows up, and he being all spooky and mysterious with his fog as he like teleports in. And he's like, Artanis, no, wait, you can't do that. The hybrid and Amon and stuff, the prophecy. He's a lot more coherent than that, but it's Zeratul's a bit goofy sometimes. I love him, but he's a little goofy. And then this is the weird point where like Selendis, who's like Artanis' second in command, and very honorable, very cool Protoss executor, shows up and just starts calling Zeratul a heretic, and he's like, Artanis, don't believe him. He's a heretic. He's a liar. He's the one who led to Ire's destruction and whatnot. And it's like Selendis. Selendis has barely been in the game, but like we've never seen her be like this at all. And also like I never understand why the Blizzard made it so that the Protoss blamed Zeratul for Ire, because like he didn't know that's what happened. And like I don't think he like none of them even knew until Kerrigan told them in Brood War. Like they just thought that the Overmind figured it out somehow, like on his own. Not that Zeratul was the reason. It was when Kerrigan showed up in Brood War and told him that they realized. But it's still like it's not Zeratul's fault. He didn't know. No one knew. It's I don't like that narrative choice. But anyway, it doesn't really matter in the end too much. But I mean, kind of. But for the fates of some. But in the end, it's Artanis goes ahead with the invasion anyway. Zeratul basically warned him like, don't invade Ire because Amon's using this planet for something. He's not sure what, and it's probably not a good idea to send all your forces down there. But Artanis is like, actually, I think it's more that Zeratul's just kind of warning Artanis of Amon's existence, period, and that it's like you should probably go fight him instead. But Artanis is like, let's go, my friend. I get what you're saying, but we're right here on Ire. We got everything planned out. Let's just do this first, and then we can get to Amon, essentially. I think that's kind of more what happens. So Zeratul kind of relents, and we get to the first mission, which in the campaign proper, which is for Ire. And in terms of actual story stuff, it is really not that interesting to tell. Or like even gameplay wise, it's basically you just get a big old army, mostly of zealots. And then you get some stalkers, some immortals, and even some colossi. And there's a big old linear map of Zerg, and you just got to go fight them all and just burn all the Zerg down. It's like, hey, here's some units that you're going to use in the future. A move, basically it. You can rescue some friends along the way, and that's about it. The only like not necessarily trip up, but like wrinkle in the mission is in the last section where a bunch of hybrids show up, and it's one of the most unintentionally funny lines in in all of StarCraft 2 is the hybrid show up, and of all people, Zeratul's the one to go, impossible, hybrid on Ire? When it's like, you're the one who's been studying the hybrid and studying the prophecy for the past 6 years in game. You should be the last person to be surprised that they're a hybrid on Ire when you're the one who's been warning everyone about Amon and warning that this is a bad idea. Is really dumb. Overall, I like this campaign, but there's just a couple of moments here and there that are like, what are you doing, man? What were they thinking in the writer's room? But anyway, after that, things start to get a little wonky, to say the least. They're able to get that the Protoss are able to get a foothold on on Ire and get stuff settled. And then like I said, things get a little wonky, and Zeratul like, I gotta go check these guys out because they're just not responding to my calls. Gotta go find Artanis. So he tries to go find the ship that he uses, his Void Seeker, and then it finds that the Void Seeker is destroyed. And then the Zerg show up, and they beat the Zerg, obviously. So Zeratul goes off on his own to try and find Artanis, and you're left with your first macro mission in the game. And it's basically you have Stalkers and Zealots, and that's it. And just don't use Zealots on this mission. They're not great. And Stalkers are so much better. And it's basically just, how to build with Protoss, how to, construct a pylon and all that. And then it's, how to use Stalkers with Blink and all that. So it's a very simple mission, and you go and fight some Zerg, and then you find some Daylon Protoss, and they're all corrupted with Void Energy and stuff, and it's like, oh no, they're evil now because they're corrupted. Who would have thought that, the evil corrupting entity that is Amon would corrupt the Protoss? Oh no. So you go and fight some Protoss, then you go find the Protoss base, and it's like, oh no, they're all corrupted. Who would have thought? And then you get a little extra segment with Zeratul as the Protoss and the Protoss are fighting against each other with corrupted and uncorrupted, and Dark Templar and High Templar fighting. And Zeratul finds Artanis, who's being corrupted as well by Amon himself, because I think Amon's trying to use Artanis as his host body for the moment. And so Zeratul shows up, and you get a really, really good cutscene essentially where Zeratul is I need to remove your nerve cords, Artanis. I mean, he says it's more your nerve cords, they must be removed. And he activates the side blade, and it's really cool. And then he tries to charge in, and then Artanis blocks it. And it's before then he was, with all blue energy and stuff. But then after that, he's got red energy. And then it's Amon himself is speaking through Artanis. And there's a big fight that happens between the corruptor Artanis and Zeratul. And then eventually you get one of the best moments in all StarCraft 2 is Zeratul realizing there's only one way out of this. And he revs up for one of those final, in any good sword duel where it's the two combatants prepare to charge at each other for one final blow, and one of them's gonna die. Zeratul pulls up for that, and he readies his side blade, and he delivers the quote, "My life for ire." And for those who don't know, "My life for ire" is a quote that the Zealot says every time you train up a Zealot, essentially. And the Zealot is the basic unit for the Protoss. It's your infantry unit, that bulky melee unit that it's all right. It's not terrible, but it's not great. But it's, as the name suggests, they're a bit zealous for fighting for ire, especially, in StarCraft 2 with ire, overrun and all that. Their devotion to ire is something that is, zealot. It's a zealous devotion, but maybe not exactly. They might not understand the meaning of the planet of ire and its history, compared to Zeratul, who is over 1,000 years old and one of the few Dark Templar to actually know, have been on ire before what's it called? The big old schism that the Protoss have that I'm forgetting. The Aeon of Strife. That's what it's called. Or Aeon of Strife, however you want to pronounce it. But Zeratul, ire means so much to Zeratul, just as a person. And especially given that he's the one who carries the burden of letting ire fall to the to the Zerg. This means so much to him, and it's such a beautiful climax to his character. And eventually he does unfortunately die in the duel, as he goes in, he aims for the nerve cords, which he severs and takes the killing blow from the Amon possessed Artanis. And so he sacrificed himself, as any good Protoss does tend to do. And his dying words, he tells a freed Artanis to find the keystone, as that's the key to go find the Xel'Naga. Then he passes on to whatever afterlife the Protoss have, with Artanis actually taking Zeratul's Sideblade as his own. So when you see Artanis after that, he's got a really cool custom addition to his already really cool model. of having one blue side blade, one green side blade. It's just really cool. I love this scene so much, even if it's like, for as much as I kind of have joked about Zeratul a lot over the course of these episodes, Zeratul is awesome. And like, even if he does have to going out like this is like, it is really, really good in terms of writing and, just storylines and all that. It is just cool. It's one of those cool self-sacrifice moments. So after that, with Zeratul gone, Artanis starts freeing everyone he can, Protoss-wise, from their nerve cords. You even get another cutscene after that where Artanis and some of his allies find the Protoss Faith Smith known as Karax, who has already been freed by some Dark Templar. Freed, when I say freed, I mean his nerve cords have been severed, so he's no longer bound to the Khala and therefore able to be corrupted by Amon. And so Karax is basically your like engineer buddy for this one, voiced by Travis Willingham. And it's funny because Artanis voiced by Patrick Sates in StarCraft 2, and I feel like Patrick Sates and Travis Willingham, their voices are very similar. And so hearing them both in the same game is always pretty funny. Like, you can definitely tell a difference between the two, but it's like they've got a pretty similar vocal tone, I feel like. I like both of them. Like, Patrick Sates is great as Frankie in One Piece. Travis Willingham is great as Roy Mustang in Fullmetal Alchemist. And many, many more for both of them. But yeah. So anyway, you get Karax and you go, and Karax and Artanis are like, all right, so we got to leave. And there's this thing called the Spear of Adun, this massive arc ship that's like buried in the surface of Ire. And it's like, it was, I forget exactly the original purpose of it. I think it was kind of like for like deep space colonization projects, I think, but it's this massive warship that is like, we got to leave and we're suddenly without a ton of forces. Here's a giant ship with a giant army inside. Who would have thought? It's kind of a Deus Ex Machina, but it's fine. It's not like super important. So Spear of Adun is the name of the mission. Also, last of the sort of intro missions, as every campaign in StarCraft 2 has. And this one's not like super interesting. Honestly, most of them, like gameplay wise, not exactly the most interesting. The level design in Legacy of the Void is not the best, I'll just say that. But basically you have to free 4 locks that are like been corrupted by the Zerg, or not necessarily corrupted, but like just have a bunch of Zerg growth on them. So you got to free them so you can power up the ship. Then you also have to deal with some Protoss fighting you again, or they're fighting you from like one angle and the Zerg fighting you from the other. And like Celendis is leading the charge, or corrupted Celendis, I'll just say that, or add on. I'll apologize if I'm a bit scatterbrained. I had already recorded another YouTube video before this earlier in the day. That was an hour and a half long. So it's trying to get this out before it's too late, and I just been talking a lot today. But it's all right. We're getting there. So anyway, after you finish Spear of the Dune, you take off and you leave. And Spear of the Dune is your hub for the rest of the campaign. So it's like the Leviathan in Heart of the Swarm and the Hyperion in Wings of Liberty. And the Spirit of Dune, it's got your typical, it's got the bridge where you can select your mission. It's got I forget exactly the names of, I think it's the War Council is where you can adjust your units. And then the Solar Core, which is where you can kind of adjust the upgrades of the Spear of Dune itself. So the Spear of Dune has this like top bar set of abilities. So like the one you start out with is Deploy Pylon. So it has like an energy bubble that can charge up to, or hold up to 100. Solarite energy is what it's called. And then you can spend that energy on various abilities that you can unlock more of as you go on when you collect bonus objectives. The default one is Deploy Pylon, which is basically you use it for like 75 energy, and it just spawns a pylon wherever you want it, wherever you have vision, essentially. So it's fine. It's not the most awesome ability in the world, but it's still it's serviceable. The Spirit of Dune gets some pretty insane abilities later on, but yeah, that's that. The Solar Core is where Karax hangs out because he's a big old nerd, and like he kind of like will tell you about random stuff. And yeah, so that's that. So with the initial missions done with, you have 2 choices of where you want to go. You can either go to Core Hall to go and grab the keystone from the Dominion, or you can go to Shakuras to go, make sure everything's all right over there, and go tell everyone about how things did not go great. So I think we'll go to Core Hall first. I don't think there's a specific like canon route for where you want to go, because on it, like, both of these make sense of like where like or like realistically where they should go. I think both of them honestly make a good bit of sense. We'll go to Core Hall first in this recap. So when you show up in Core Hall, Artanis sees that basically a bunch of Terrans fighting each other, and it's like realize that Mobius Corps is here fighting the Dominion. Raynor shows up on the comms, and he's like, initially, unknown Protoss vessel, what are you doing here? Like, identify yourself. And then he's like, oh wait, Artanis, I know you. You're my friend. And Artanis like, what's going on here, Raynor? And Raynor's like, Mobius Corps showed up, and they're trying to get the keystone because they want it. I actually don't think Raynor knows why they want it, but I think they know that they want it. And Artanis is all too happy to oblige, to help out, and also take the keystone off of Raynor's hands. And so the first mission, Sky Shield, is basically the titular Sky Shield is this giant orbital platform that the Dominion were using as like a defense platform, but it is under siege heavily by Mobius Corps, and essentially its atmospheric stabilizers have been damaged, and it is plummeting straight through the atmosphere into Core Hall itself. And if it lands on the surface, it would explode and kill a lot of people. Essentially, it's the whole meteor crashing into the Earth thing, but the meteor is made man-made in this case. So your goal is to go deploy onto Sky Shield itself and secure the locks, or not the stabilizers. Locks of the last mission. Yeah, so it's to secure the stabilizers, and so Raynor can set in a bunch of repair teams to go and repair it and stop the descent of Sky Shield. So pretty simple there. It's to borrow a term from Giant Grant Games. The objective of the mission is super unique. There are X amount of things on the map you have to go around. Each is guarded by a progressively stronger group of enemies. That is the quintessential mission design of Legacy of the Void. So that's why I'm not really going to spend too much time on how these missions are set up, because if it's a macro mission, it is almost always that setup of there are these things that you need to go either secure or destroy. They are scattered throughout the map, guarded by groups of enemies that are progressively stronger the further in the map you get. That's like the missions themselves and the theming and like the visuals and whatnot do a good enough job to like differentiate it, so you're not like really noticing it when you're playing it. But if you're talking about it and trying to summarize it, it's just the same thing over and over again. I'm sorry. I like this campaign, but it could have used some better mission design. Like, I harped on the mission design in Heart of the Swarm a good bit, like compared to StarCraft and StarCraft Brood War. This Legacy of the Void is worse, unfortunately. I think Blizzard just kind of got complacent in their mission design, which is unfortunate. But anyway, so Sky Shield itself, it's you fix the locks and then you stabilize the shield. So after that, you have to go to Brothers in Arms, the next mission. And so there's Keystone is over on the far side of the map, guarded by a massive force of Mobius Corps, all Terran stuff. And basically Raynor and Valerian have two bases on sort of the north and south side of the left side of the map. And they're trying to punch through the defenses to resecure the Keystone, while the Mobius Corps is trying to extract with it. And your goal, as you kind of spawn in sort of the middle of the two Terran bases, is to attack with them and eventually push to the Keystone. But then when the hybrids show up, because they're the kind of the lieutenants of Amon and running the show here, they'll basically let off a giant psionic pulse that just stuns all the Terrans, because Terrans don't have the best psionic defenses. So it's a sort of tug of war, not necessarily tug of war. That's actually a later mission, but it's an attack defense mission where you spend the time while your allies are active attacking, and then while they're stunned, you spend it defending. You can also attack because the Mobius Corps is all Terran as well. They're all stunned too. So it's once you get rid of the hybrid, you can use the you can use your army to go and fight through all the completely stunned and defenseless Terrans. So it's actually pretty fun. It's a really fun mission. I think one of the better missions in Legacy of the Void. This is also the mission where you get the Immortal officially. The Immortal is amazing. I love it so much. It's just a bulky Strider that does a lot of damage, especially to armored units. Pretty simple. It only hits ground, but it's solid. It's just a very solid unit. Can't go wrong. Well, I love me some Immortals. And I think, I should also go over the War Council because I forgot about that. Let me go over that. I'll finish the mission, and then I'll go back to the War Council. Let me do that actually. So the mission itself is basically once you finish it, you get the keystone back, and then you get a bit of a cutscene at the end where you get a view of the carnage, the cutscene warriors, and you like see a bunch of dead Terrans essentially, as like Matt Horner and Valerian and a bunch of Terrans are like assessing the dead and burying them and whatnot. It's very like somber. It's really good cutscene, and it's like taking a moment to like pause in the action, and then like kind of looking over it is Raynor and Artanis as they're like mulling about the fate of warriors and stuff, and like how it's this whole conflict is like bigger than anything else, and it's like it's just a lot, and like for the Terrans, it's like they can certainly fight this fight, but they're a bit out of their league at this point. Like this is more so than anything the Protoss fight now, and it's like the Artanis and Raynor have a pretty nice little philosophical conversation, and then like as Artanis is preparing to leave, he's like, "It is the custom of your people to shake the hand of a friend, is it not?" And like he gives a handshake to Raynor, and it's really cool. And then Raynor kind of turns his wrist a little bit and sees that Artanis is wearing Zeratul Psyblade, and like Raynor's is like, "Give him hell, buddy." And it's nice. I like it. It's a really nice cutscene. All right, so back on the Spear of Adun now to go over the War Council. So the War Council is where you can customize your units, and I love the unit customization in this game because it is you instead of like flat upgrades in Wings of Liberty, where it's like you just have you can spend your money to just get combat shields or simpacks or whatnot, or in Heart of the Swarm where you have your you have the smaller upgrades that you can choose, like flip flop between like the smaller mutations essentially, and then the evolution missions to like choose a permanent upgrade to your units. The Protoss version, Legacy of the Void version, is basically have specific faction versions of units. So each of your standard combat units has 3 versions that get unlocked over the story. Usually you get 2 initially, and then a third one as you get some more factions in later on down the line. And so it's basically the first 2 you get are the Kalai version and then the Nerazine version. So it's High Templar, Dark Templar. So for Zealots, it's the Ire Zealot essentially replaces its normal side blade with like a war axe, and it spins a bunch. It's not very good. It's really only good against Zerglings, but they removed unit collision when they spin, which is kind of interesting. And then they can like stack up and do a ton of like concentrated area damage, but then they'll all like be incredibly vulnerable to splash damage because they're all like sitting on the same pixel. And then the Nerazine version is the Centurion, which has this its charge ability can also stun, and then it also phases through I think friendly and even enemy units. I don't remember exactly, but it's a neat one where it's like it adds a little bit extra to its charge ability, so it's like more of a stunner rather than just like pure damage. It's like got a little bit of utility to it. Both are pretty cool. I think the Centurion's usually a bit better than the Ire Zealot. For the Stalker, or sort of like the ranged Strider kind of thing, you can get the Stalker, which is the Nerazine version. And basically their upgrade is that when they blink, they have like increased shield regen for a small amount of time. So like it just encourages blink micro. They just don't get too much out of it. The Stalker is still just really strong anyway. The Ire version is actually the Dragoon. So the Dragoon returns from StarCraft 1 finally, and it's just bulky, does a lot of damage, pretty slow attack. Like it's slow, bulky, does good damage. Not like not a very complex unit, just solid damage output. Can take a good bit as well. It's just not very mobile, but it has good pathing now, which is nice. I like the the Dragoon. It's fun. And then for the Immortal, when you unlock it in Brothers in Arms, the initial two variants are the Immortal, and I think the upgrade for that is, I forget if it's a active ability or passive ability, but I think it gets like an improved hardened shield, so like it basically just negates a ton of damage when you use it. And then the Nerazim version is, I believe, the Annihilator, and it's like similar to a normal Immortal, though I think it loses the shield and instead gets an ability that I don't remember the name of off the top of my head, but it's like basically just it fires its cannons a bunch, and I think it does like 200 damage to a single target. So it's basically just you have a button that does a bunch of damage to a single target. So it's against ranged or against ground or air too, which is really nice. It's just solid damage. The Annihilator is really nice because you take an already good unit and then just add like really nice burst damage along with it. It's really good. You can't go wrong with the Annihilator. And then also one final thing to note about the War Council is the NPC that's in there. Racist grandma. It's Rohana is her name, and she is a preserver. And basically she was stationed on board the ship itself as a basically she's like got this giant like headdress that has like a bunch of nerve cords attached to it. So she's like a walking archive essentially. And like her stated goal is basically to provide like advice, military and tactical advice to her commander based on the decisions of past executors and stuff. So it's basically like she's using the strengths and weaknesses and like the successes and defeats of the like thousands of commanders that she is like known of in her mind, and instead and is like basically using that to like help inform her current commander, which is in this case Artanis. The problem with Rohana is that I don't remember exactly when the Spear of Adun was sealed. I think it was like sometime after the Aeon of Strife, so it's like sometime within the past 1,000 years, and so she has a lot of not good opinions on the Dark Templar, since she's from the time when the Dark Templar were considered heretics and not exactly good people, and when the Protoss Civil War was like killing millions of their citizens. So she's not a very good person at all. And unfortunately, like all of her conversations are basically just like her being bigoted towards someone or whatever. And Artanis is basically like, Rohana, you can't do this. It's 2025. It was actually 2015, I think, when this came out. But it's basically just like that. It's like, Grandma, we can't say those things anymore. It's really funny. It's like either that or basically just like Rohana saying this, like, this person did this. And Artanis is like, well, he might have done that in that time, but now we do it in this time. They did not write Rohana very well. I'm sorry. She also has this other thing where, because she's still connected to the Kala, she just like occasionally gets possessed by Amon. It's like not that interesting, and it's basically like her like mini character arc that she has, like she gets possessed a couple times, but she's like really like adamant on that the fact that she can control it, and like she doesn't want to give up all of her preserved knowledge. But then eventually, after like getting possessed for like the third time, Artanis eventually convinces her to sever her nerve cords and like free herself from the shackles of the past and go into the future. And it's like it's supposed to be like this whole thing of like we shouldn't be burdened by the sins of our past, or like not necessarily burdened, but like we shouldn't be just kind of held down and like clinging on to the bad stuff we did in the past as a society, and instead like look forward and all that. And it's there's a lot of this like campaign itself is like moving forward as people, and like not just living in systems that might have worked in the past, because it's like they might have actually not been great in reality. And it's fine. It's just like it doesn't always go over great, but it is what it is. All right, so that's it for Ohana. Let me try and speed this up a little bit because it's already getting way too long. Because I still have a good bit to go. So we'll go back over to Shikuris now, since that's the other kind of starting planet. You can also go to a different planet called Glacius, but we're going to get to that a little bit after, just with how it's kind of set up in the timeline here that I have in front of me. So the first mission on Shikuris is known as Amon's Reach because, of course, the Zerg are already on Shikuris. They actually just used the warp gate that was on Ire. They repowered it because Amon has the control of the Protoss now. They know how to repower the warp gate on Ire, so they just use that to warp over to Shikuris. And now they're invading Shikuris, and it is really bad for the Protoss there. So the Protoss matriarch, or the Dark Templar matriarch Vorzun, who's the daughter of Rajagal, contacts Artanis and is asking for help. And he's, of course, happy to oblige because Shikuris has basically been his home now for the past couple of years, and the Protoss home base essentially. So the Vorzun's basically been evacuating the capital city of Talamatros, the one you blew up back in StarCraft Brood War with Duran, and basically there's just a bunch of shuttles that are being evacuated, and there's I forget exactly what you have to destroy, but basically you have to blow up a couple things. And while also defending the shuttle gate from these things called Void Thrashers with these giant hybrid entities that shoot a bunch of energy at the shuttle bay. So it's basically just a mix of attack the big scary monsters and then also go around and attack the things you need to blow up to win the mission, which I still don't remember what they are, and I'm trying to find on the wiki what it says, and it's just not saying anything. I feel like it might also just be killing the Void Thrashers, but I think it's it's like different shuttle bays is that they're covered in Zerg stuff, and then you got to go free up the shuttle bays. That's what it is. Yeah, okay. So this is also the mission where you unlock the Dark Templar, which is a very fun unit to use. And so after that, it's not a super hard mission. You just use the Dark Templar and avoid detection, and then you kill the Void Thrashers and you get free everything. So after that, Artanis and Vorzun have a bit of a conversation, and Vorzun's like, yeah, the plan is kind of lost at this point. We can't exactly do what we did last time. There's just too many Zerg, and we can't exactly get back to the warp gate and turn it off because the Protoss would the guys over on Ire would just turn it back on again. So let's just blow up Shikuris. Artanis initially like, why? No, please don't do that. I like Shikuris, but Vorzun's like, it's my planet. I get to do what I want. So it basically takes some convincing, but Artanis agrees to help blow up the planet. So you go to the temple that back from StarCraft Brood War, which you needed the Uraj and the Kalas to go and use. So you go back to that temple, and it's basically a big old defense mission known as Last Stand. And you fight against a bunch of Zerg. You basically wait and build up. Or the goal is to let the billion Zerg or something like that to build up onto Shikuris, and then you can trigger the temple. And that's about it. It's just you build up a bunch of defenses, pretty much, and then you overload the temple and explode. And then you get another really really cool cutscene at the end where Zeratul's narrating, and it's narrating about the Shadow Walk, which is this sort of rite of passage tradition among the Dark Templar, where it's you have to complete a task alone, and it's being away from the Kala, being away from others, that's how the Dark Templar operate. And, they're used to operating in the shadows, operating alone, operating without the blessings of their people. And Artanis basically at the end, he's inside the temple on his own, fighting off against an endless swarm of Zerg as he's trying to stall for the last minute or so. And it's another cool action scene with Artanis just being awesome, and Zeratul's narration is awesome, and it's he crowned the mantle of Dark Templar, and it's Artanis does this cool move, and it's yeah, let's go Artanis, let's go. It's so cool. I love that cutscene. There's the cutscene game in Legacy of the Void is really strong. I'm just gonna say that. Okay, so with that cutscene over, Shakuros goes boom, essentially. I think that's all I can say. Shakuros explodes, so unfortunately the Dark Templar are now no longer with a home, but the Amon's forces have taken a serious blow. So after that, we go to the planet of Glacius as I think it's Karax basically is like he located a Protoss research facility that housed some tech like related to the purifiers, which basically get expanded on lore wise a little bit of their basically like machines, like machines created by the Protoss to like essentially have AI that could replicate like actual Protoss people or like former like fallen warriors, so they're like next step in like Dragoon technology essentially. But it largely got shut down because the AI started to go a little bit mad, and that gets expanded on later in Legacy of the Void. But for now, it's like Artanis and Karax agree that it's like probably need to wake him back up because we need him at this point. Okay, also, the Dark Templar, their specific subunits, so the Nerazine version, which is just the Dark Templar, their upgraded version has a big old like area damaging thing. I forget what it's called, but it's basically it has like an automatic trigger where they will just like blink around in a set area, dealing a ton of damage in a very short amount of time. It's really, really strong. Like the Nerazine Dark Templar in Legacy of the Void are incredible. They're one of the best units for a good chunk of the game, up until like really late when like 90% of the enemy is air, and Dark Templar obviously cannot hit air. The Ire version is the Avenger, which is basically just a regular Dark Templar, but when it dies, it instead warps back to the Dark Shrine where it can get built. So it's basically they have a extra life to them, and it's like that has a cooldown of like 3 minutes or something. They're fine, but it's just easier to go with the Nerazine Dark Templar because they're just better. All right, so we get to Forbidden Weapon, which is the mission on Glacius. You get contacted by the first descendant of the Tal'Darim, known as Alrak, who shows up, and he is there at the behest of his High Lord and Amon to blow up the facility because he doesn't like it. And so basically he's using his ship to shoot a giant laser beam across the facility, and it's a race against time, so you got to go get to the end of the facility before the laser beam gets there. And you got to fight through some Tal'Darim along the way. And that's about it. You get the Sentry during this. The Sentry is this kind of like robotic unit that has like a tickle beam. Then it can create force fields as well as like a Guardian Shield. And I think, actually, I don't think it gets force fields in Legacy of the Void now that I think about it. But it gets a shield recharge beam as well, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, they're a support unit. They're not a frontline combat unit. They're a support unit, essentially. The shield that it projects like reduces damage, and then shield recharge ability is pretty obvious what it does. And eventually at the end of this, you break open the vault and you find a Protoss unit there. And after it, when you bring it back onto the ship, the big old like purifier machine introduces itself as Phoenix because it's got the AI of Phoenix, our old buddy. He's great. I love Phoenix. And so he chills out in the solar core with Karax, and it's cool. So you get a little. He's not. He's actually very large. he's a very large unit. The Purifier Phoenix. He's a big boy, and he's cool. He's just excited, happy to see Artanis again, and happy to fight some Zerg because he just loves fighting Zerg. Phoenix is a very simple character, and he's very fun. I love me some Phoenix. Everyone needs a Phoenix in their life. He's just cool. After that, with the initial forces of the Protoss rescued, the Keystone secured, and a little bit of extra tech unlocked. The Karax kind of uses the Keystone. It basically figures out that it's a map to bring them to this place called Ulnar, which is this like mysterious place in like the middle of the sector that houses the Xel'Naga. Essentially, it's like it's the map that points them where they need to go. And so you take the Spear of Adun into Ulnar, and the plan is to go and wake up the Xel'Naga. Also, with the completion of the last mission that I'm already Forbidden Weapon. That mission, completely forgot the name of it already. You get access to the Purifier faction to start, mainly for the Zealot, and you get the Sentinel, which is literally just a Zealot, but it is mechanical instead of biological, and when it dies, it then reconstructs, and that cooldown is for like a minute. And compared to the Avenger, the Sentinel is actually really nice. Partially because the Zealots are going to be dying a lot more and they're a lot less expensive, so you can kind of use it. And there's also like, there isn't a version of it that is like just absurdly better, like the Nerazim Dark Templar is. So just having like 2 times per Zealot per like 2 times your Zealot per Zealot is pretty nice. It's like the Tarask in the in Heart of the Swarm. Then there's also an upgrade for Spear of the Dune later on that you get that gives a passive heal to any mechanical unit. So you add that on to the Sentinel. It becomes really bulky. It adds on to the already bulky playstyle of the Zealot. So it's pretty cool. Anyways, we go on to Temple of Unification, which is the first of the Ulnar missions. And it's basically you find that the Tal'Darim are already there, because of course they are. And they're controlling a bunch of locks that are like sealing the temple essentially. And so you got to go and beat them up. This is where you get the Phoenix, not to be confused with the unit Phoenix, or the guy Phoenix, the now Purifier Phoenix. That Phoenix, the character, is spelled Phoenix. The unit Phoenix is spelled like the bird, Phoenix. I think that's how you spell it. But yeah, like the unit Phoenix is spelled with a PH, how we usually spell it. The character Phoenix is spelled Phoenix. And so the unit Phoenix, which I should probably specify, is a very fast moving, kind of frail, anti-aircraft, flyer. Essentially, it kind of replaces the scout as a better scout. Because honestly, the Scout's anti-ground attack was so bad that you didn't need it. The Phoenix, also unit Phoenix, has an ability that I think it's gravity something. It can lift up a unit from the ground and suspend it in the air for a bit. And I think in this version, the Phoenix that lifts it up becomes unable to attack, but you can use other Phoenix along with it to shoot as well. So it's it's a solution a little bit to the fact that they can't hit ground essentially. And so this is one where you use the unit Phoenix and its ability to go around the map and attack the Tal'Darim and eventually secure all the locks at once. So you're kind of playing, it's a little bit like whack-a-mole in a sense, where you're kind of just like getting your own locks and then also preventing the Tal'Darim from securing their locks at the same time. So you're just kind of going all over the place. It's a solid mission overall. So after unlocking the temple, as you obviously do, Kerrigan shows up, because of course she shows up as well. Because apparently she just kind of figured out how to get to Ulnar. I still don't remember exactly how, but she's just kind of there. And you get like a lot of lore stuff on like the Xel'Naga and like how they're born. So it's like they're supposed to be born from like the purity of form and purity of essence, which is like, you take the Protoss and you take the Zerg and you like mash them together and you make a Xel'Naga kind of. Sort of, I think. And it's like they're trying to go in and find the Xel'Naga. So you get a no build mission where you get to control Kerrigan and Artanis, which is pretty fun. And so you go through and you fight a bunch of Xel'Naga constructs, and then you fight Moby's Core and the hybrid. And then eventually you find where the Xel'Naga are all supposed to be, and then they're all dead. They're just dead. So because the Tal'Darim are here and the hybrid are here, they just went into where all the Xel'Naga were like sleeping essentially and just killed them all in their sleep. So yeah, the whole trip was here for nothing. Hooray! And then now like everyone's kind of just like trapped and stuff. Also, Amon's kind of alive again, and he's kind of taunts Artanis and is like, "Hey, I'm building my new host body over on Iron." As he, I don't know why he showed it to him, but yeah, I think it's kind of like to break Artanis's will or something, or like just make him really sad, and it just didn't work because Artanis just is built different. Uh, it is what it is. It's a fun mission because you get to use Artanis, who's kind of like a more of a tank and like healer, and then Kerrigan's your like glass cannon DPS. It's pretty fun. Then after that, we get to not the infinite cycle, because that was one that I just talked about. We get to Harbinger of Oblivion, which is the last of the Ulnar missions. We get the Dark Templar, not the Dark Templar. We got that already. The High Templar is what we get. And before the mission starts, we get introduced to Alarak again, as he just shows up on the bridge of the Spear of Dune, just teleports onto the ship, and he's like, I need to talk with your boss. He says it's a Vorzun, basically. He's like, we need to talk to your boss. And like a zealot on the bridge tries to fight Alarak, and Alarak just like slaps him out of the way. And then he slaps Vorzun out of the way, and he's like, your hierarch is in trouble, but I can save him, so you should listen to me. He has one of the best lines where he's like, your leader's in danger, because I'm reading the quote now because I remember this quote, and Vorzun goes, you think us fooled because she's not buying whatever Alarak's selling, and Alarak just goes, yes, but that is irrelevant. What is relevant is that Amon has opened a gateway to the void. So it's so good because Alarak shows up and he's like, yo, so I don't know why I said yo, that was really bad. I should never say that again. But Alex shows up and he's like, hey, so Amon lied to me, and we weren't promised salvation. We were just going to die, probably. So I don't like him anymore, and I'm going to side with you instead to get my revenge. And you're going to help me. This is not an option. You are going to help me. And that's what you do. It's great. Alarak. And it is the meme of friendship ended. It was when I saw Alarak, and when I realized that Alarak was going to become a friendly NPC, it was friendship ended with Abathur. Alarak is now my new favorite character. I love him so much. He's so much fun because he is 100% sass 100% of the time. He knows he is strong. He knows he has power. He knows he can piss off anyone, and he revels in it because he can. It's so good. He's also voiced by John Delancey, I think is his name. Let me double check on that. But he plays John Delancey. He plays Q in Star Trek Next Generation, among other Star Trek shows. And I think that's like one of his biggest roles. He's also in Breaking Bad for a little bit as well. I think also he's in My Little Pony too, which is crazy. But yeah, John Delancey is fantastic in this role. I love Alarak so much. And basically he's telling you that you got to go, like, he basically helps you rescue Artanis and Kerrigan before they get consumed by void energy and stuff. And it's basically you got to destroy the 4 crystals on the map to free the thing. And they're guarded by progressively stronger groups of enemies. Hooray. And this one, you have a little bit of time limit because there's like big old void energy stuff that's consuming all of Kerrigan's hives, and you gotta prevent that from happening because I guess we gotta make sure Kerrigan's stuff doesn't get broken. I don't know. It's whatever. But you get the High Templar here, and the High Templar is cool because it has Psystorm, and Psystorm is awesome. Yeah, that's about it. You win, and then you leave Ulnar, and that's about it. I think there's like some other lore stuff here and there, but it's not super important, especially because I'm trying to get through this fast. I swear I'm trying. So you get another option of like where you want to go. And one of them is you can go to basically you then can get the purifiers or you can get the Tal'Darim. You can do stuff like that. So we're going to go do the purifier stuff first because it's really funny when you do it first and then talk to Alarak, and Alarak's like, every time you're on the purifier world, and he's like, why are we here? We need to go to Slain. I want to go become High Lord. Please let me become High Lord Artanis. It's really funny. He's like so upset when you don't like give him his way. It's great. Alarak's dynamic with Artanis is fantastic because Alarak is someone who loves pushing buttons, and he knows he can push Artanis's buttons and like kind of get away with it because Artanis is a good guy and he's like nice enough to like not like fight back, but like in the sense of like Artanis can basically take it. Like he can take the jabs and he won't like really, he won't snap essentially. So it's not that Artanis is a punching bag, but like like Artanis's worldview is like completely opposite of Alarak's. Like Artanis is a very selfless person. Alarak is a very selfish person, like the most selfish person you could ever think of. Like he is greed and like narcissism personified. It's great. And like Artanis is the exact opposite. Like he is like completely willing to lay his life on the line for anyone else. And their clash of styles is fantastic. Anyway, so unsealing the past with purified stuff, you go to a planet, Endion, that's what it's called. And it's basically there's a big old space station in orbit that houses all the purifiers. You got to go to the planet first to unlock the space station. So there's this big old thing called something or whatever. What is it called? What is it called? Actually, I don't remember. Megalith. That's what it's called. This like giant machine that can open the lock. The locks are all covered by Zerg stuff, so you got to go kill all the Zerg stuff, and then escort the Megalith along the way. Also, with the Tal'Darim along with you, now you get access to their faction. So they get, for existing units at this point, the Dark Templar, or like the Cloaked Warrior, I think is what they call it officially. They get the Blood Hunter, which has a lot of abilities that I think like one of them is like it can nullify detection. So it's actually like, I think it's really strong. It's just not really that useful in Legacy of the Void itself, because there just aren't too many missions outside of the one you get the Dark Templar in that are like kind of designed around using stealth and like avoiding detection and whatnot. So they're just like, they're not super useful for how the campaign is designed, but like in other stuff, they're really, really good. For like custom missions and whatnot, they're very helpful. They're just not great in this sense. And then you also get a Tal'Darim version of the ranged, like the Immortal, essentially, that whatever they call it there. And it is the Vanguard, and it essentially replaces its cannons with like mortars, and they just do splash damage, and they're really good. Like I don't think they have any other like special abilities. They just kind of do a lot of good area damage, pretty much, and can't really complain. Like honestly, all three of the Immortal, Annihilator, and Vanguard are all very strong. So unsealing the past is again very simple. You go and unlock the stuff. And then Phoenix, the Mecha Phoenix, it kind of plays contact with the space station and is like, hey, can you open up and let us come in? And they're like, okay, you can come in. So you go into the space station, the purifier, what is it called actually? I don't remember. And it's like giant purifier station essentially. That is Cerberus, that's what it's called. Is a giant warship essentially, and it's already being overrun by the Zerg because the Zerg are just that that fast, and so you got to go cleanse the infestation of the of Cerberus and then free the Protoss. And again, it's not that difficult. There's like four groups of three, like I think they're called null circuits is what it says. And you got to blow up all the null circuits. What is kind of nice is that like after you blow up one sector, a big old force of Purifier Protoss will show up and just start wrecking house in that area, which is pretty cool. So you actually get to see like you get to see a Purifier version of the Stalker, which like you never get to use in the campaign, which I'm a little sad. But I think you can use it in co-op. I want to say it's pretty neat. I forget what it's called, but it's pretty cool. And then you get you can talk with like a Purifier High Templar, which is cool. And yeah, I think it's Clolarian is what his name is. He's got like a cool like High Templar or like Purifier like mecha version of the High Templar like character portrait. So it's pretty cool. And yeah, eventually you blow up the Zerg and the hybrid, and then you free the Purifiers. And then the Purifiers, after talking with Mecha Phoenix and Artanis is like, all right, so the Protoss scientists in the past who sealed you up, yeah, they weren't smart and they were kind of bigoted. So we're not going to be like that. We're going to just accept you for who you are. So please join us. Also, we kind of need you to blow up all the evil Zerg. So please help us. And the Purifier is like, all right, let's start with the Zerg that are on the planet underneath us. And so they just use the Cerberus, their giant space station, and turns out it has a giant laser beam on the bottom. So they just use it to glass the planet below them because As their name suggests, their whole thing is to purify planets from Zerg. So they get to work pretty quickly. I'll just say that. And so during the after this, you get I forgot to mention the options for the Unit Phoenix. So the Unit Phoenix, the regular one, like the upgraded Phoenix, essentially, I think it has instead of picking up one unit off the ground, it can pick up two. Then the Nerazine version is actually the Corsair, so it returns from StarCraft Brood War. I actually don't remember. I never really used it too much in Legacy of the Void, but I think it was okay. And then the Purifier version of this is the Mirage, which I also feel like I never really used too much. It was just kind of okay. I think it was like a regular version of the Unit Phoenix, but it could like occasionally like avoid attack. Like it basically could be immune for like a couple seconds. It could phase shift essentially. It could be a Mirage for a couple seconds. So I just remember being all right, but I just never really used any of those units too much. All right. The other one is going over to Slain, the homeworld of the Tal'Darim, because Alarak wants to become High Lord, and it's like he basically says to Artanis, "Hey, if I become High Lord, I can control all the Tal'Darim, and they won't attack you anymore, so we can go kill Amon together." And Artanis is like, "All right, fine, sure. I don't trust you, Alarak, but it's more the enemy that I do know compared to the enemy that I don't." And he's willing to trust Alarak enough compared to the rest. And so you go to Slain, and Alarak is very proud of his home place, or his home planet that is literally hell. like even more so than Char, I feel like, where Char is just all lava. Slain is like everything on the planet wants to kill you, including the Tal'Darim. And so it's pretty funny. Just like, this is, like the Tal'Darim are very much a survival of the fittest type of thing. And the whole goal of what Alarak wants to do is that he basically wants to challenge Malash to the right of Rakshir, which is like basically I'm challenging you for the position of High Lord. Either I will kill you and ascend, or you will kill me and I die and you wouldn't have a challenger anymore. It's very simple. It's how the Tal'Darim society kind of works. And so to do that, first Alarak basically is like, we gotta kill Malash's guardians so we can weaken him. And so you do that. You get access to the Void Ray. Void Ray is awesome. It's a Nerazine based ship that basically is a bulky flyer that does single target damage with a beam constantly, and that beam grows stronger over time. I love Void Rays. They're awesome. And so it's the mission is very much designed around Void Rays. The Malash's Guardians are kind of like holed up in these like big old temple things, and you can just fly Void Rays around and shoot them with your Void Ray beams and destroy them. It's not super hard of a mission. And then after that, was pretty funny, where like Artanis confronts Alarak, and he's like, "Alarak, you told me that the Guardians were supposed to weaken Malash, but I realize now that this is just not the case at all, and you completely lied to me." And Alec's like, you might be right, but it's actually pretty good that we got rid of them, because they would have just challenged me after I ascended to High Lord. So, it's kind of just getting rid of potential competition, essentially. And Artanis is like, I hate you right now, but all right, whatever. Let's move on. It's just another like really good cutscene between the two. And I love their dynamic. They're great. So the second mission on Slain is Rakshir. Should be obvious. And so it's basically, this is the tug of war mission where Alarak and Malash are kind of fighting with each other along this like big old lane through the middle of the map. And if too many units get around, and too many enemy units get around Malash, they will kind of power him psionically and push Alarak back towards like the big old like pit of doom. And if Alarak gets pushed in the pit of doom, he dies. You can do the same thing with your units. So it's basically like, keep your units around Alarak and he will push forward. And try not to, it's tug of war essentially. And eventually you win. That's all I can really say. It's not too much after that. You win. Alarak pulls like a This Is Sparta on Malash, launches him into the big old pit of despair, and he becomes the new High Lord. So now you have the Tal'Darim on your side. This is also the one where you can get the variants for the Void Ray. I feel like there's only 2. I'm trying to remember the third variant of the Void Ray, because there's the Void Ray and then the Destroyer, which is the Tal'Darim version of the Void Ray, and it's not nearly as good because it's just not. It's basically its beam, instead of doing more damage to a single target as you concentrate on it, it instead starts bouncing onto different targets, so like creates sort of a chain amongst it, but the damage from the chain is just like really not good at all. So yeah, it's not worth it compared to the Void Ray, which just does a lot of damage pretty much. It has a really cool line when you build it though, where it's like the Death Fleet descends, and it's it's cool. I like the Void Ray. Give me a sec so I can actually figure out what the other one, because I feel like there was 3. I don't think there was just 2. Okay, it was actually the Arbiter. I thought this was for the later version, but no, it is. So the Arbiter actually returns from StarCraft 1 as well. It's a support ship that I think it has an anti-air weapon, but it's not great. It's more like anything around it is cloaked, and it has like mass recall and stasis as well. So it's a support vessel, but just use the Void Ray. The Void Rays are awesome. I think it's the bonus that it gets, or like the upgraded version of it. It just does more damage through its focus. I think it's just solid. Can't go wrong with the Void Ray. All right, so with that done, so with the Tal'Darim and the Purifiers under your command, you have a very unified Protoss at this point. But there's one more thing to do, and that is Templar's Charge. So there's the basically it's the whole Artanis is like, all right, we got to go take the fight to Moby's core so we can go stop their hybrid production essentially. And it's like there's this big old asteroid base that Moby's core is using. And so they attack it, and then surprise, surprise, the Mobius core starts beaming onto or warping onto the Spear of Adun itself. So Artanis, Alarak, and Vorzun, and all the warriors, and Phoenix as well. I should also mention Phoenix's story. I'll get to that after this, but they all basically take the fight or start defending their ship, leaving Karax kind of in charge of the mission. And there's a minor point in terms of lore wise that the Protoss were very caste based society, and Karax was in the basically the nerd class, the artificer class, I think is what they call it. And he's not the warrior class essentially. So this isn't his job. This isn't what he was born to do. But Artanis is we're in a new age now, and you got to do this. So gameplay wise, it doesn't matter because it's still you playing, but it's lore wise, it's still kind of interesting. Yeah, it's nice with Karax, leading the assault. And this is the one where you get the carrier, your capital ship, and it's a pretty neat mission where your base is on this moving platform, and you have a control pad to move it up, down, left, right. Since all the mineral patches around are very scarce, so you have to constantly be moving around your base to find new materials and also avoid the enemy. And the carriers are obviously best here because they can fly, and there's a lot of really strong enemy Terran along the way, and also some pirate as well. Eventually, you blow up the facility and you destroy all the power cores and make it go boom. And Karax gets congratulated for his hard work, and it's nice and wholesome and all that. It's pretty cool. And with that, basically with the hybrid production destroyed, so Amon can no longer produce hybrid. Moby's core is completely knocked out, and the Protoss completely unified. They now take the fight to Ire itself. With the first one being Templar's Return, and it's a very fun mission where, if I remember correctly, yeah. So this is one where you get multiple different sections where you control all the heroes of the Protoss that you kind of assembled. So it's the first section is with Vorzun and Alarak, where they go infiltrate the Citadel of the Executor, which is where way back in StarCraft 1, like the initial mission or meetings, like the Zoom meetings that you have with, where it's like you as Artanis are meeting with Aldaris and Phoenix and like occasionally Tassadar and Zeratul, like in that little building essentially, in the background drop that you have essentially. It's like that's where this is that you're freeing essentially. And it's pretty cool. And it's like the section's fun because Vorzun and Alarak are just constantly bickering with each other. It's really fun. Then after that, the next move is Karax and Phoenix. Also about Phoenix. So the Mecha Phoenix has a whole little character arc because it's like he's not actually Phoenix. He's just like an AI modeled after Phoenix. And so he basically eventually kind of comes to terms with his own identity, eventually referring to himself as Talendar. Like he basically he has the memories of Phoenix, but he wants to become his own person because he doesn't feel like he is actually Phoenix. So he renames himself, and he's like a lot of talking with Artanis and talking with Karax and stuff. It's a neat little side story that I won't really go into too much detail. I just recommend going and checking it out for yourself. But yeah, so Karax and Talendar do their own thing. They're basically all trying to secure some stuff to like repower things. I forget exactly, but it's just, doing objectives. And like Karax and Phoenix are fun, where they like Phoenix is this like really tanky upfront like just damage dealer and like just tanks a lot of damage. And then Karax is like more of a sport guy, where he has like he generates his own power field and can like supercharge buildings, so like he can make photon cannons and they shoot really fast. And then he can like reclaim Protoss mechanized units, so you can basically just build up an entire army, or like basically just steal an entire army of like Reavers and Immortals and stuff. It's really fun. And also to go back to Vorzun and Alarak, Vorzun's basically just a super Dark Templar. So like he permanently cloaked, does a ton of damage, and blinks and all that. She's very similar to Zeratul actually in how she plays, although a bit squishier. Alarak is basically just deal all the damage all at once. He's Berserker essentially. Like he will take damage, but in doing so, he will deal more damage. He's great. Alarak is a very fun guy to play with. Again, he's just the best character in all of StarCraft. I'm just gonna say that. And then the third mission is kind of the least interesting, where you take Artanis, who you've already played as, and then you just get some other various different units, like just standard units, not necessarily the heroes, and you got to go through some caves and blow up some Zerg and whatnot. And eventually it's you're basically just destroying, now I'm reading again because I can remember this again, you're destroying the psionic network to basically delay the return of the Golden Armada led by Selendis, so you actually have time to go and fight Amon and destroy his host body. That is what happens in the next mission, the Host, where you take the fight to Amon's host body, which I think is actually built out of the Overmind's corpse, then a bunch of like Protoss energy as well. So it's this big old mission where you just the big climactic macro mission where essentially it's you gotta go and kill a bunch of void shards to go and kill, like, weaken Amon enough so you can go and blow up his host body. It's a very fun mission in game because there's just a lot going on. You also finally have access to the variants of all the capital ships. So you get the upgraded carrier. I actually don't remember exactly what it does. I just remember being solid. You can also get the Purifier version, which is actually the Tempest. And it's like a cooler looking version of the normal Tempest that has, I think, like a better version of its like long range attack. And then the Tal'Darim version is the Tal'Darim mothership. You can only have one at a time, as with any mothership, but it's a very strong unit that has a bunch of cool abilities. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but it's a very fun unit to just use. And so with the host, you destroy all the void crystals or the void shards, and it weakens Amon's host body enough, opens them up for an attack, and it's like it's a really cool like ending cutscene where Artanis is basically just like, fire everything we have, and it like cuts to space where it's like you get a view of the like various Protoss ships, or like various like Kalai and Nerazim ships, so you get like Void Rays and carriers, and then it zooms back a little bit more to show like the Tal'Darim Death Fleet, so it's like all of their carriers and motherships and stuff, and then it zooms back even more, and it shows Cybros using its laser cannon, and everything gets focused on, also the Spear of Dune as well. I completely forgot about the Spear of Dune. It also shows up and starts shooting Amon, so it's like literally everything the Protoss have, they just launch it right at Amon and just vaporizes his host body. Is great. It's just like just a giant middle finger to Amon. It's really cool. But they're not done, because obviously Amon's physical body might be gone, but his essence still lingers, because he just gets booted back to the void, essentially, as with any Xel'Naga. And so with that, we get the final mission of the regular Legacy of the Void campaign, Salvation. And I swear we're almost done. I'll power through the epilogue real quick because it's terrible. So Salvation is basically a big old defense mission. You got to hold off against like all three factions, essentially, mostly Zerg and Protoss, as Amon's sending everything he has. As you charge up the Keystone, so it's actually very similar to All In. And it's basically, the idea is to charge up the Keystone, and with it could basically briefly purge Amon's essence from all the Protoss who are still connected to the Kala. And then once it does that, the Protoss can then sever their connection to the Kala and be free from Amon's grasp. And that's what you do. That's about it. There's like you have 3 different lanes that you defend. Each of them has an AI of the other faction. So like the top lane is defended by Vorazun. The middle, like bottom middle, is defended by Alarak, and then the bottom right is defended by Karax. So you get a little bit of everything. And then you're obviously playing whichever version of the Protoss you want to play as, or like whichever mix and match kind of. And eventually the Keystone goes off, and then like Selendis and all of the remaining Kalai Protoss sever their nerve cords, and they become free and all that. And that's with that's how Legacy of the Void ends. So it's like not necessarily the epilogue, but like the final cutscene for Legacy of the Void kind of shows the Protoss society as itself rebuilding, and how like Artanis, as the leader of the Protoss, is like more accepting and is willing to accept all walks of Protoss life. Like the Tal'Darim are even accepted. Alarak takes the Tal'Darim and goes home, but he permits those who want to leave and go join the rest of Protoss society to do so. But he's still just kind of doing his own thing with the Tal'Darim. They're just kind of doing what they can. So now we get the epilogue. Unfortunately, it sucks. So after everything, we get into the Void, the first mission. There's 3 missions here. And basically Kerrigan shows up along with Raynor as well. They show up with Artanis, and like, all right, so we know Amon's been banished back to the Void, so we got to go back to Ulnar and go kick his butt, essentially. So they kind of go into the entrance to Ulnar, I think is where it is actually, or like the entrance to the Void, which I think is like by Ulnar somewhere, kind of. And they got to go, basically you got to go into the Void itself. And like the entrance to the Void is defended by Samir Duran, Emil Narud, whatever you want to call him. I think at this point they call him Narud. And like he is in his full-on Xel'Naga form at this point, and he is basically defending. So it's a pretty fun one where you play as the Protoss, and you kind of got to advance forward along with both your Terran and Zerg allies, fighting against a mix of all 3 factions on the enemy side. It's just solid overall. And eventually at the end, after Narud gets weakened, Stukov shows up and rightfully gets the final kill on Narud, avenging himself multiple times for everything that Narud did to him. Then after that, the Kerrigan and everyone goes inside, and like they kind of hear the voice of Tassadar, like the spirit of Tassadar that's been guiding Zeratul for so long. And it turns out they find like a ghost of Tassadar, but it's not Tassadar. It's actually a Xel'Naga known as Oros, who's like the last living Xel'Naga that isn't Amon. And Oros, and like big old Cthulhu thing, is like, Kerrigan, you're gonna be my vessel now because you have the power. And then he just kind of gives Kerrigan her essence, or his essence, and she goes Super Saiyan. Like she literally turns into this golden flaming version of herself that looks kind of lame. And Kerrigan, like Super Saiyan Kerrigan, is like, all right, I have enough power now, but I need to like charge it essentially. Like I need to be able to stabilize and grow my power and become super and all that. So you got to protect me while Amon tries to stop it. So this is one where you get to play as Raynor, and he's a big old defense mission, and you have like mostly I think you have all three factions where like you can largely defend one area, then Artanis and the Protoss defend another, and then I think Zagara and the Zerg defend the third entrance, and that's about it. You can actually use Kerrigan in her Super Saiyan form, and like she shoots a big old beam of like orange energy to like it's sort of like the laser drill from the Dig in Wings of Liberty. It's kind of like that. Then we get to Amon's Fall, the final mission of the epilogue, and it's basically there's a bunch of crystals around the map as Amon shows up, and you gotta blow up the crystals, and then when you do that, you win. You get to play the Zerg, and you have Super Saiyan Kerrigan, and then you just fight mostly against a bunch of other Zerg. Like it's Amon's Shadow Forces. It's not a good mission. You blow up a bunch of rocks, and then in a cutscene, Kerrigan flies up to Amon, who's big old Cthulhu thing floating in the sky, and then she just blasts him in the face, and then he dies. And that's StarCraft II. And then Kerrigan kind of like dips, and then Raynor dips as well, presumably to like go live out a life together. Zagara takes the Zerg and kind of carves out their own sector of space to just do their own thing, but not like really be expansionists anymore. And Dominion are doing their own thing, being peaceful and all that. And that's it. So it's like, unfortunately, the end of StarCraft II is kind of a downer. It's just not amazing. But the journey is better than the destination. I'll just say that for StarCraft II. And just StarCraft as a whole. I'll say that. But we do have Nova Covert Ops, and I'm going to try and go through this really quickly. It's, in terms of relating to the overarching story, it's not all that important. A lot of this is just rehashing plot points from Rebel Yell, but it's still pretty cool. So it's like not too long after, it's like a year or two after Nova like wakes up in a facility and she has no idea what's going on, and so you control her and she escapes and she finds some of her team. And they're like, what's going on? Why are we all amnesiac and stuff? And like, who are these people? Who are the defenders of man and whatnot? So you got to go escape. Sudden Strike is the second mission. And you got to go and help Rory Swan on this planet from defending against a bunch of feral Zerg. And you do that. It's cool where you get like some defilers show up. So it's kind of neat there. And yeah, so you defend the base, and then the Defenders of Man show up, and they're led by this General Carolina Davis, and she's like, very Arcturus Manx 2.0, but she's like trying to sway the Dominion people of like trying to kind of going back to the old ways of like xenophobia and all that. And then the third mission is enemy intelligence, so you go to Tarsonis because Nova's trying to like figure out what's going on with the Defenders of Man. Because she's doesn't trust them at all. Nova gets her own ship with like her own crew and all that. And I'm very much glazing over this because it's just not super important. I don't mind the campaign. I played through it last year, but it's fine. But eventually Nova is able to like find the technician from the Defenders of Man that was like working on her and like brainwashing her and all that, and like gets a little bit of information out of him. So she's got to go and figure out like what to do essentially and like how to get her memories back. So next we go to Trouble in Paradise, which is on this other planet. And essentially I think it's on Tyrador 9 is the planet itself, which I believe showed up in Wings of Liberty at some point. I don't remember exactly which mission it was. I just remember that planet existing. But anyway, let's see. It was the home of a different Tyrador in like same system was home of the Mobius facility that you play in the Mobius Factor mission. But anyway, in this mission, there's like it's like a resort town on the Tyrador 9, and then the Tal'Darim show up, led by First Ascended Janara. So it's like the new Alarak kind of. She's kind of an idiot. And like she's trying to blow up a bunch of Terrans and also Zerg because she can. And yeah, so the Defenders of Man had like used psi emitters to lure a bunch of feral Zerg to civilian worlds because they're just copying Manx's plan from the original StarCraft. And then you stop Janara, fight her back, kill some Zerg as well. It's a solid mission overall. I'm just kind of glancing over it. So after that, because Nova's like realizing that there's something in her mind is relating to all this. She needs some terrazine to go and do a little acid trip. So she goes to a planet that's kind of controlled by the Protoss by the Tal'Darim that has a bunch of terrazine on it, and finds some Tal'Darim and also some Terran there, like researchers. So you go and you get some terrazine to go and do a trip. And then Nova does the acid trip and figures out that on the planet of Antigua Prime, actually. So we go back to there. Nova was actually brainwashed by the Defenders of Man to go and plant a bunch of psi emitters to lure a bunch of Zerg there to go and mess up the place. So on Antigua Prime, you go and visit it after. And it's a neat mission where it's like Nova goes to these spots where like she wants to relive her memories, and she like looks back into the past and like back when there was still a city there, and she's like remembering the mission where it's like the cover was that she was supposed to like plan to like designate this area as like we should defend against this type of Zerg, and like an Ultralisk or a Lurker or whatever it is, and then you choose that type of enemy, and then that type of enemy shows up in that area. So it's like you kind of choose as you go through the area of like what kind of enemy and like what kind of encampment you want to fight. So it's pretty cool. I'm also glossing over like the customization you have for your units, but it's like you get some like really souped up like super upgrades for all your units, as well as Nova herself, which is pretty fun. So anyway, after that we get to In the Enemy Shadow, where Nova is looking to go and capture General Davis because she's evil and all that, because she's the one using the psi emitters and whatnot. So it's a Nova only mission where you just use her to go either. It's one of those missions where it's like you can go about it two ways. You can either make sure no one witnesses you, or make sure there are no witnesses left to see you in that sense. And you can go about it either way. But eventually you go and you capture, you fight Stone, who was like your partner, another ghost who was like, I think actually like still being mind controlled by Davis and the Defenders of Man. And so you captured General Davis, but then it was kind of all part of her plan, sort of a little bit, because Alarak shows up with the Tal'Darim. He's kind of here a little bit. It's like the best part about Nova Covert Ops is we get more Alarak. But basically he shows up because he kind of gets debated a little bit by General Davis, where he's like, because he's getting annoyed at the Defenders of Man because they're just like really annoying insects to him, and he just wants to squash them, but they keep getting like slipping through his grasp. And then he finally is able to find them on, I forget what planet this is, but like he's like, I finally found you, Defenders of Man. But it's like when he shows up is that it's basically when Valerian shows up to all the citizens, and he's like, I'm arresting General Davis on charges of treason. And then our Alarak shows up and he's like, Defenders of Man, I'm here to kill you, blah. It's like the worst timing possible. And then like Davis slips away in the carnage. And then the next mission, the penultimate mission, Dark Skies, is you and the Dominion defending against Janara's Death Fleet, as like she just sends a bunch of Tal'Darim after you. And it's a solid mission overall. You can actually use like basically there's like 3 major lanes going through the city, and you can use like an ability to deploy Gorgon battlecruisers to go and just clear out the lanes. It's pretty cool overall, and you get like nukes a bunch. And then the last one is Endgame, and you go and find General Davis, who's taken over this massive like experimental Dominion warship, not even warship, like mech essentially, called the Xanthos. That is like, it's a really fun fight because it's like a multi-staged like boss fight with a bunch of like different weapons that it has as it like gets stronger. It's really cool. And then essentially at the end, Nova infiltrates the Xanthos itself, maneuvers through and shoots Davis in the face, and that's it. And then Nova just kind of takes her ship and then leaves and to go do her own thing or something. It's very much like the briefest of summaries on Nova Covert Ops. It's fine overall, but yeah, that in the end will do it for all of StarCraft II that we've had since 2016. I feel like there's been rumors a little bit about like some kind of new StarCraft game. No idea what it'll be. Haven't seen anything about that yet. But for now, outside of like the occasional co-op mission that got introduced later, I think, that's all she wrote for StarCraft as a series. It's been around since 1999, essentially 1998, 1999, roughly. Really, really influential. I would like to see more of it. I would love an animated series or like a live action series of StarCraft. Not gonna lie, but I don't think we're ever gonna get it, especially because Blizzard sucks nowadays. Like 2016 was like the last year they were kind of good, and then they just kind of fell off the map after that. Not that they were, like happy, wholesome company before that. They were most definitely not behind the scenes. Yeah, no, Blizzard, oh boy. But that's a story for another day. But I still would love some more StarCraft in my life, some new StarCraft, but don't know if we're ever going to get it. Unfortunately, we'll see. But that will, I think, do it for this episode. So coming up on Tuesday, I believe, if I can get that done then, will be my AFC South summary. Or recap, essentially, continue that going on. I'll also, this coming week, for when this is getting posted, I will be streaming the World Baseball Classic USA versus Brazil on my YouTube channel. Live streaming that, doing my play-by-play. So feel free to tune in. Also, I might be streaming on Thursday, trying to get like a gaming stream set up, do Gaming Thursday and Baseball Friday. But we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that'll be something soon. And then next Saturday, I got no idea what I'm going to do next Saturday because obviously I'm done StarCraft. And I'm going to probably take a break from talking about video games and I might shift over to, I don't know, maybe history, movies or something. I don't know. We'll see. But I think, done a lot of gaming. February was all gaming. So we'll unless something big happens, we'll shift over to something else entirely. Whatever I can think of next Saturday, but that will be for then. So I actually am a little surprised I got this under 2 hours for, I feel like, how long these episodes have been. But yeah, there's a lot to cover in Legacy of the Void. I think I got it all. That should do it for everything. Thank you very much for listening.